The decade of 1850 found New York in the grip of America's Industrial Revolution. The city's commerce and industries grew at such a rapid pace that by 1854, nearly 1 million people lived and worked in New York. Although the city limits extended only to 42nd Street, urban planning underwent radical changes. The primary issues were not only better school and housing conditions, but a much needed and efficient public transportation system. As early as 1853, proposals for the use of the still underdeveloped steam engine and elevated railroads were considered by the city planners. Subsequently, in 1867, Charles T. Harvey erected the first column of the 9th Avenue line on Greenwich Street, and he demonstrated its use to curious onlookers with a cable-operated car truck. In 1868, Harvey received permission from the New York legislature to operate the line, which employed cable wheels installed at half-mile intervals along the track. Thus, the first cable-operated passenger car rumbled over the streets of New York. However, due to frequent breakdowns, the cable propulsion method was deemed impractical, and the whole 9th Avenue line was auctioned off for a mere $960. By 1872, the giant New York Elevated Railroad Company took over the line and put the first steam-drawn train into service. Its engines had to be boxed in to avoid frightening the horses on the street below. Although steam was the new propulsion, Dr. Rufus Gilbert displayed much foresight in proposing elevated railroads in 1875, such as the compressed air method of propulsion, which literally blows the cars through giant tubes supported by elaborate steel structures, and this more conventional method. However, the proposals were forgotten under legislative pressures. Nevertheless, the Gilbert Elevated Railroad Company never lost its founder's taste for beauty and ornamentation. Legislative pressures weren't the only kind hampering the young railroad lines. Public outrage became intense, and people resented the clamor and the expanding network of tracks crawling through their peaceful neighborhoods. Yet the needs and necessities of industrial progress triumphed until, by the turn of the century, New York's elevated railroads formed the most complex transportation system in the world. During the 30 years this man has been railroading in New York City, the improvements in the rapid transit system have had a marked effect on the lives of New Yorkers. The familiar scene of a man and his family enjoying a leisurely L-ride between the tall buildings in downtown Manhattan has now given way to the bustling crowds under those same buildings. And those long trips from way out in Canarsie to Times Square have been cut in half with faster and more comfortable trains. At one time, you needed a train and a trolley to get to your destination. Today, you can walk directly from the subway to where you're heading without even going up to the street. The old wooden cars known in the system as BUs were born in 1904 and are still in operation on some lines. Any old-timer will tell you about the old BUs and how their jerking motions slowed the train down and made it easy for anyone to run ahead on the street below and beat the train to the next station. Of course, today the BUs do better than their old top speed of 10 miles per hour, but somebody somewhere will still try to beat them to the next stop. New York has witnessed many long and bitter winters. Everybody and everything froze up, including the vital third rail. When ice formed on the rail, contact was broken with the cars, power was cut off, and the old BUs just rolled to a stop many times between stations. The only thing the passengers had to look forward to was the pot-belly stove at the next station house. Things certainly have changed. There are taller buildings now in New York, and the trains are faster. There's nothing left of the slower attitudes of yesterday when, even during the rush hours, people seemed to take it easier. The slow and easy pace has given way to The New York City Transit system makes over 8,000 separate train trips a day on more than 250 miles of running tracks. That's about the distance between New York and Boston. How is it done? Well, for one thing, there are more than 7,000 cars to transport millions of New Yorkers every day. And during the rush hours, a good majority of these cars are constantly on the move. The necessity for such an overwhelming amount of cars is only partially reflected in the more than 50 different routes and terminal points in the whole system. Yet all of these figures would mean nothing if it weren't for the expert and efficient maintenance of the entire system. Located throughout the system are work yards charged with the job of keeping the mechanics of the system running smoothly. No matter what the repairs are, the yards are equipped for any size job, whether it be to strip down a car completely to its bare wheels or merely replace a worn brake shoe. Considering the many thousands of cars operating every day, only 13 work yards are needed for all phases of maintenance. However, maintenance doesn't stop at the work yards. There are times when trains cannot be brought to the yards for repairs. For this reason, the New York City Transit Authority employs over 250 road car inspectors who are located at strategic points on the main lines and who must respond immediately for emergency repairs on trains incapacitated during service hours. The proper maintenance of the tracks is subject to inspection around the clock. Numerous track gangs are on duty day and night to ensure that the hundreds of thousands of feet of running track are without faulty connections. Nearly 700 signalmen keep an eye on every red, yellow, and green light along the tracks and make sure that they flash on cue. This operation is backed up with over 150 control towers to keep a trace on every train. The estimated cost to operate the entire system is $100 million a year, and this does not include the cost of the electrical power. This power supply is handled by more than 150 substations equipped with huge generators. Each station has assigned to it certain sections of tracks to which must be supplied a constant flow of 600 volts of electricity. To do this, the Transit Authority purchases from Con Edison some 2 billion kilowatts of electricity every year. This massive power is fed to the substations, which break down the initial supply and distribute the required 600 volts to the tracks. All of this electrical power costs the New York City Transit system $30 million a year, a far cry from the non-electric cable-operated trains that rattled through the city nearly a century ago. An interesting aspect to the system is the diversity of its station designs. The vaulted ceilings in a busy downtown terminal, the mosaics on station walls, and the isolated calm of a country-style station all point to the distinctive nature and variety of New York's rapid transit system. city that is now characterized by simple modern architecture, there remains nostalgic evidence of the past in the Baroque kiosks and the stained glass windows, and the unique blend of design and environment express an air of order and antiquity. Eight million people live in New York City, and nearly every one of them depends on the subway for transportation. To ensure smooth operation of the system, the Transit Authority employs various methods to keep the trains in shape in summer and in winter, especially in the winter. During this time, trains are kept moving constantly and stored in tunnels to protect them from the freezing weather, and alcohol is used to break up ice formations on third rails and switches. The year-round service is provided by over 30,000 workers, and this does not include the fifth largest police force in New York State, the Transit Authority Police. The workday ends, nightlife begins, and the system continues to serve New Yorkers in their leisure hours. So, into the sunlight hours of leisure, the system continues serving. time for leisure ends. The time for work ends, and all things come to rest. The English poet Tennyson once wrote, "The old order changes, yielding a place for the new." And so it is with the system. The vintage cars are put away until one day they will be remolded again, perhaps into the vital parts of the ever-changing and endless system.